Around 1852, Lucius Benham met Sarah Plimpton. He was a farmer and fisherman working his parents' land in West Haven, Connecticut, and she was teaching at the nearby Oak Hill Female Seminary. Following an illness, Sarah returned to her family in Sturbridge, Massachusetts to recuperate. Lucius had not forgotten her, however, and in January 1853, he wrote her the first of what would be many letters.
Hoping sincerely, yet perhaps presumptuously, that a communication from your unworthy friend may be acceptable, I would dare to address you. What I wish to communicate, I would much rather do verbally than in the manner I now propose to do it. Perhaps you have not forgotten that I have desired to cultivate an acquaintance with you, and perhaps have not misjudged respecting the object I had in view in this desire. Permit me to say that this desire has not diminished, but rather increased since those very pleasant seasons we spent together. Since your opportunities of an acquaintance with me have been so limited, it seems to me but right that I should freely and candidly share some things you ought to have the privilege of knowing. I feel unworthiness of so intimate a union with one whose intellect has been so much more highly cultivated than my own, I having received but a common school education. I have no library to which you could have access. Perhaps I ought to say that I intend to take care of my aged and infirm parents, and whoever chooses to cast in her lot with me, though deprived of many privileges, will probably have this one, of exercising the graces of meekness and patience. This I submit to your prayerful consideration, desiring, if you deem it worthy of your notice, that you reply at your convenience and oblige your sincere friend, Lucius A. Benham. P.S. I learned from your sister here that, on your return home, you found your mother unwell. Also, your sister, who returned with you, was threatened with a fever. It would give me pleasure to learn of their welfare, and that your health is still improving.
After several weeks, Lucius received Sarah's reply. Her sister had recently died as the result of a fever, and the family was mourning her loss.
Mr. L.A. Benham, your letter was received nearly 3 weeks since, but my attention was so much occupied with Sister Kate that I had no inclination, much less time, to write any letters excepting those actually necessary. Therefore yours has remained unanswered this long. But now Sister has gone to that mansion which the Savior prepared for her. I must notice your letter, since it seems worthy of an answer, and I hope you will not style yourself an unworthy friend, as I do not like to correspond with such. It seems in an acquaintance with me you have one particular object in view, and since you have been so honest in stating all circumstances, perhaps I had better be so too. You were sorry you could not communicate verbally, but to speak the truth, I was glad, for I like to become acquainted partly by correspondence, as I think in this way we become better acquainted. I am always happy to receive letters from my friends, and make it a rule to answer all I receive. From your friend, Sarah.
And so Lucius and Sarah began the business of getting to know one another. It was a little awkward at times.
I have 3 sisters and brother. My second sister, Elvira, married Charles Stone, a farmer, and they have 4 sons and 1 daughter. The daughter's toes turn inward on both feet, so that in walking, one passes over the other alternately. She steps on what to us would be the outside of her foot. I have been fishing today, therefore please excuse this scaly letter. It's nearly time to horizontalize, so good night.
While Lucius was certain he wanted to marry Sarah, she was more cautious. Her older brother Salem was a married minister, then living in Vermont, and she wrote to him for advice soon after she received Lucius's first letter.
Dear Sister Sarah, I suppose you have not in your case come to any decisions, or you would have not sent us this letter and the accompanying request, and I am unable to give you any particular advice for want of information. With regard to his private character and religious standing, we have heard nothing but what was favorable. With respect to his book education, you will be likely yourself to give that all the weight it ought to have in this question. It is not really of so much consequence as is the character of his mind. But all these questions are only preliminary and outside of the main question. If they are all decided favorably to accepting the proposal, still there is another question more important than all of them. more important to your peace and comfort and usefulness for life, and that question is whether you do or can love him with such strength and warmth of devotion as to be willing for his sake to bear all the trials and disappointments and sufferings of life. You may be well assured that without such affection, married life will be most miserable life. Whatever advantage of circumstances you may have, never consent to give your hand unless your heart is fully in it.
Sarah took it upon herself to learn more about Lucius and began asking questions about him and his circumstances.
Now I want to ask you one question, and you can answer or not as you think best. What are your means, or what is the state of your pecuniary affairs? Now you will no doubt be surprised at this question coming from me, but my reasons for asking I can give if you wish. I am as ever your friend, Sarah.
Lucius was pleased to respond and perhaps got a little carried away.
Your inquiry respecting my pecuniary resources relieves me of the embarrassment of communicating this information without knowing whether it would be interesting. I will state facts just as they are. I think there should be no concealment in regard to anything which is important for the other to know. I am not what the world calls wealthy, neither do I ever intend to be. Yet, with a Heavenly Father's blessing, by industry and frugality, I hope to obtain a comfortable subsistence while a pilgrim here, and to enjoy the luxury of giving a little occasionally to those in need. My dear friend, may I indulge in the free expression of my feelings toward you? I find a certain sensation existing in me growing stronger with every communication I receive from you, gently entwining around my heart and drawing it still closer than ever toward the kind heart that dictates what the hand writes. May I hope, with divine permission, ever to enjoy the companionship of the one I am now addressing as a sharer of life's cares and comforts, its joys and sorrows?
Sarah had yet to be convinced. She was particularly interested in one point.
Since you have given me the privilege of speaking freely, in your first letter you say you intend taking care of your aged parents, and this I consider no more than right. But supposing you had a companion whom you loved, but with whom your parents could not live happily, nor she with them, what would you do? The reason of my attending to this subject is because I have seen so much unhappiness in these relations, and it is almost always between mothers and daughters-in-law. Now, I can't say exactly how I should act under such circumstances, but very much doubt whether my meekness and patience would be quite equal to my pride and obstinacy. For whether you believe it or not, there is much of this prevailing in my nature. I do not feel acquainted with your parents and know not their dispositions, but I do know there are aged people with whom it is very difficult to live and please.
Lucius attempted to set her mind at ease.
I can, in some measure, at least appreciate your feelings in regard to the difficult task of living with and pleasing old people. It is perhaps one of the most difficult positions in which a young lady can be placed, to become the wife of a man who has aged parents to take care of. What would be the trials of one who should accept my hand, I cannot say, but cannot expect them to be less than the common lot.
Sarah wasn't completely pacified, but the two continued to exchange questions and opinions.
Now I should like to propose a subject for your next, if it is proper for me to do so. It is women's rights. I have seen considerable written upon this by both gentlemen and ladies, and should like to know your views.
Lucius had questions of his own.
May I suggest a subject for you to write upon? If so, children's rights. It may not be amiss to understand each other's views on this subject.
They continued to correspond quietly, keeping their letters secret from nosy relatives and prying eyes. They sent their letters through Lucius's trusted friend Quincy and Sarah's sister Louisa, who taught at Oak Hill Female Seminary, to avoid detection. Lucius also did his best to distract his neighbors.
I have much to do so that I can attend the meeting in the afternoon at Milford, which I intend doing with Miss Nellie J. This will no doubt make some talk, but, you know, there must be something to feed curiosity, else it would starve to death.
Sarah remained concerned about living with Lucius's parents, so they began discussing what alterations might need to be made to the house to accommodate everyone.
I have just been looking at your drawing, for which I am much obliged. Now, I am unaccustomed to advise in such matters, but since some suggestions will be listened to with pleasure, I will just state some things which are convenient in a house. It is, I think, convenient, especially in a farmer's house, to have 2 kitchens, as one might be turned into a sitting room in the summer, and the other someplace where it would be cool and comfortable working, which might be vacated in the winter for warmer quarters. Then, in every house, for comfort, there is needed a good, convenient room for sickness. As you know, we are never exempt from that, and it is much easier taking care of the sick where there are conveniences. Closets for every bedroom I think desirable, and plenty of pantry or cupboard room.
By December 1853, Lucius's stepmother's health was deteriorating, and he revisited the topic of Sarah's willingness to marry.
Had it seemed best and convenient for all concerned, it would have been my choice to form that connection several times alluded to in the spring, but as nothing can be done in Mother's stage of health, perhaps it had better be deferred. Yet, at the same time, I am free to confess that her state of health makes it none the less desirable on my part in some respects. The question of time may be premature, or, as we sometimes say, putting the cart before the horse until another one offered for consideration some months since has been more definitively answered, and here I would utter a word of caution. Be cautious how it is answered, for the deep depravity of my heart is not yet fully manifest to everyone. There, haven't I expressed my feelings freely enough on these topics, and if too freely, please forgive.
Sarah was still reluctant to accept Lucius's proposal.
You write, had it seemed best and convenient for all parties, it would have been your choice to form a certain connection in the spring. Now let me read to you a sentiment I saw not long since in Weaver's Hopes and Helps for the Young. It is hazardous in the extreme to marry short of 2 or 3 years' acquaintance, and careful study of the character of the contemplated companion. This I write as a warning to you. You might perhaps find yourself deceived in regard to my character upon further acquaintance. It is almost January, and the spring months come in quick succession. But this is all premature. Do you know it is a serious affair, or might be, to decide a question for life, especially a question of so much responsibility and which needs so much investigation, more than I feel capable of giving it? Perhaps upon considering more in regard to a certain question proposed some months since, you may feel inclined to withdraw it. I have many faults and failings of which probably you are not yet aware, and I know them little enough. But suppose I should take the responsibility now of answering this most important question and decide a negative. Would not your opinion of me change somewhat? And would you not think our correspondence was all waste of time? And would you not consider yourself rather fortunate in terminating it?
Lucius sought to reassure Sarah.
The question referred to, proposed some months since, is truly an exceedingly important one and demands serious and prayerful consideration from those who take the responsibility of its proposal, as well as those called upon to answer it. Still, I do not feel inclined to withdraw that question proposed some months since, nor regret its proposal, for I think I love you well enough to walk with you the path of life, rugged though it be. Would that I were worthy of the privilege. I have no misgivings in regard to your character, and do not feel that I am running any great hazard, though I fear you might, in answering affirmatively. Should you decide in the negative, which is your privilege if you choose, and at the same time say that you had never thought of entering such a relation with me, but only wished to raise my hopes to blast them again, thus trampling upon the finer feelings of our nature, which I cannot believe is the case with you, your character would indeed be very naturally lowered in my estimation. But if after such an acquaintance as you think sufficient to warrant a decision, you see defects in my character, of which there are many and great, which render it so unlovely to you that you would not esteem me as highly as you think you ought when sustaining such a relation, or that we were in any other way rendered unfit companions for each other, and the providence of God points to some other field as the path of duty, it seems to me your character would not thus be affected.
In Sarah's next letter, she admitted that she was warming to his proposal.
It has not been my intention to raise your hopes for the purpose of blustering them, but I have continued a correspondence for the sake of further acquaintance, as I did not deem it wise to dismiss without hearing a subject of such importance, and the result is, to be honest about the matter, I am more in favor of such a connection than at first thought. I think the best way is to get things well arranged beforehand, and to take time enough that all confusion and haste may be avoided. But I will dismiss this subject till I hear again from you.
Lucius's stepmother died in January 1854, and he again asked Sarah to accept his proposal. Clearly serious about his commitment, and perhaps buoyed by her recent admission, he told his father and sisters about his ongoing correspondence with Sarah.
There are some other things I wish to say, and I guess it is about time to begin. Since my last, I have communicated to Father and Almeida the fact of our correspondence. I agree with you in the advantage of a personal conference on a certain subject, and if you would like to have me visit you, please communicate. I would not object to a letter sooner than the usual time if you wish to see me soon, and it is convenient for you to mail one.
Though Sarah was sympathetic, she informed Lucius that she needed time to prepare for her new life in West Haven. Sarah invited Lucius to Sturbridge so they could discuss matters in person.
I should like to accommodate you, knowing your loneliness, but unless something very urgent demands the contrary, I think my earliest convenience will not be before the last of May. I shall be happy to see you here week after next if it is convenient for you, and if not, choose your own time. Then perhaps matters can be more definitely arranged, and all important questions can be discussed. So adieu for the present.
Lucius eagerly accepted Sarah's invitation.
The thoughts I am now tracing out on paper will not affect the one to whom they are addressed until the lapse of some days, yet it is a privilege which many are deprived of to communicate even in this slow, snail-like way, and I do not regret that this has been the method which has seemed necessary for us to use in the interchange of our thoughts and feelings. I had hoped that your convenience would have been sooner than the time you name, but I have no fears that all will turn out for the best, nor would I wish you to deviate from what you consider the path of duty. I thank you for the directions in regard to the most convenient route and your kind offer to send for me to Sturbridge. I think it best, however, to decline this offer, for I shall probably not be very heavily loaded, and a walk will do me no harm.
And so they met and settled the details. Lucius returned to West Haven, and their correspondence continued as they prepared for the wedding.
I now come this eve to scribble over this sheet for your special benefit, but if your expectations should not be quite realized in it, please remember I have allowed myself only a little while to write this time, and this is one way you can render me some assistance. Be content with short letters, and excuse all my imperfections therein, especially when I can't find a decent pen to write with.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Sarah's former employer at the seminary, Mrs. Wright, was not pleased with the pace of Sarah and Lucius's engagement, and instructed Sarah to make her way to West Haven as soon as possible.
My dear Sarah, do not say that you cannot get ready so soon, for I know you can from my own experience. I had only 3 weeks to prepare, and you will now have 6 or 7 in addition to the year past. All hands will help you, only fix upon the time towards the close of vacation. It is generally understood now among the people of West Haven that Mr. Benham and Miss Johnson are engaged. They walked arm in arm to church the other evening, and she was seated by his side in church, and he came home with her and stayed some time. He also calls quite frequently. All these things settle the question beyond a doubt. Now we want you should come and surprise the people before they find out, and we fear it will be known if you do not come soon, and that would be too bad. I am anticipating much pleasure in welcoming you to West Haven and in visiting you in your future home. You will have a good husband, and I hope you will prove yourself a good and obedient wife. I shall expect to see you here about the 1st of May as Mrs. Benham.
It seems Sarah found her former mentor's intervention amusing, and she related the events to Lucius in her next letter.
Did you know that Mrs. Wright put a little note into your last in which she endeavored firstly, secondly, thirdly, and lastly to impress upon my mind the importance of hastening on matters a little and coming right along down to Westhaven the first of next term? Her reasons were all very good, and I should like to accommodate as much as possible. But I have a good deal to do to get things in decent shape so as not to be pressed beyond measure when I reach my new home. And I know you will not wish me to drive away all my strength before I come. However, I shall be busy as I can consistently be, and mean to take care of myself too, not only for my sake, but yours.
As promised, Sarah continued preparing to set up her household in Westhaven.
Well, for the 11 working days just past have been ripping old garments, cutting and sewing together pieces of cloth just as fast as ever I could, have had Mrs. Belknap assisting me all the time, and next week we shall probably finish up this business when I expect to carry all the balls we have been making to Aunt Thankful, who will transform them into a rag carpet. This has been quite a job, and a lady who visited here last week and working on them a little said, by way of encouragement no doubt, I must send on word I should not be ready to come this year.
As Sarah worked on household items, Lucius eagerly awaited her move to Westhaven.
Should not be sadly disappointed if you should comply with Mrs. Wright's wishes in respect to time, though at the same time would join your brother in cautioning you against overworking, for I believe nothing is gained in this way, and would rather some things be left undone than to have all finished and yourself overdone into the bargain.
The wedding day approached, and Sarah wrote to resolve some final details with Lucius.
A plan has been spoken of which is to start Monday morn, early enough to call at Mr. Beebe's and have the ceremony performed, then take the Palmer stage. But Mother does not like this way, and we are thinking of another. That is, have the ceremony performed here Monday evening, then be ready to start Tuesday morn. Will you please write to all whom you choose from among your friends up Sturbridge 1 week from next, then to witness a certain ceremony which may be performed if the time suits your convenience? We are very busy about these times, having had 2 dressmakers, and one is still here, and we shall not be likely to have much leisure time the coming week. Will you please measure the length and width of that bedstead in the parlor chamber, and tell me how it stands in the room, and put it in your next letter if you write another before you come? Excuse this hasty scrawl, and accept love. From Sarah.
Sarah and Lucius were married on May 1st, 1854. They had 4 daughters and were married for 37 years, until Lucius's death in 1891. Their courtship letters survive in the research library at Old Sturbridge Village.